Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Sunday Science, right, right where it should be on a Monday night. Sincerest apologies. We've got Spooky and Factard. Welcome. Yes, due to unforeseen circumstances, we were unable to broadcast yesterday evening, and thank you all for waiting 24 hours. RSE, hi. Anyway, as you may have gathered from the title, we're going to be talking about a little bit about the ISS, and I'm sure many of you have heard the space deniers' claims that space doesn't exist, satellites don't exist, and all that sort of foolishness. And I thought it would be a good idea to give at least one example. Ah, Reese from Utah, nice. Let's see. Nope. Did not RSC. Didn't get a video at the launch scrub. Anyway, I thought we'd go into one way that just about anybody can verify to themselves, for their own satisfaction, that the ISS does, in fact, exist. And not only does it exist, it is populated with people. Anyway, I figured one of the best ways that any of these folks could be convinced, and also a fun way for any of you to actually communicate with an astronaut, is, and I figured would be a good example, would be to once again pull in the amateur radio examples. And you may have heard me make references to that before. It's because there's quite a bit of science involved. So it often gets dragged into our discussions here and there. Actually, I think back in the great Tesla coil experiments, there was quite a bit of talk about resonance and frequency calculations and all that sort of thing. Anyway, we might as well get started, and I'll kind of show you what I'm talking about here. I have two very short videos to show, and then we'll talk about stuff. The first will be a ham operator, Rob Kuntz, making contact, and this is an ideal way for someone who's not convinced the ISS actually exists, is a real thing, to come to the realization that it actually is. As you can't beat personal experience. And I think everyone here is probably already aware, it's not hard to find an amateur radio operator. Just take a drive and look for the big antennas. That's really all you have to do. Ordinary looking house with some obtrusive looking antenna hovering above. You'll know you're in the right place. Anyway, all right. Let us, on that note, let's get this started, and I'll show you a brief video of ham operator Rob Kuntz making contact with the ISS. Oh, RSC. Yes, I saw his musical. Anyway, yes, that is actually the case, and it is very difficult to do this without thumbs. There is no human intervention involved. All right, here we go. Let us see Rob making contact with the International Space Station. And here we go.
Okay, coming up with Horizon 297. Check in there. November Alpha 1, Sugar from November 0 Kilo Golf Mike. November Alpha 1 Sugar Sugar from November 0 Kilo Golf Mike, Salt Lake City, Utah. November Alpha 1 Sugar Sugar from November 0 Kilo Golf Mike, Salt Lake. November Alpha 1 Sugar Sugar from November 0 Kilo Golf Mike, Utah.
International Space Station, over.
Yeah, this is November 0 Kilo Golf Mike.
Yes,
Craig,
Tesla.
say your call sign
Officially,
again,
it's sugar. It's Sierra, officially.
Okay, November 6, Radio Sierra X-Ray. We've got you loud and clear aboard the International Space Station. Welcome aboard. It's great to talk to you again, Craig. I heard the Echo X-Ray Bravo. This is the first part of the call sign, but this is November Alpha 1 Sierra Sierra, the International Space Station, over.
We hear a lot of static doing the ham radio thing.
Okay, Kilo Delta Zero, Echo X-Ray Victor. We've got you loud and clear. Welcome aboard the International Space Station, November Alpha 1 Sierra Sierra.
November 0 Kilo Golf Mike.
November Alpha 1 Sierra Sierra, the International Space Station, over.
This is November 0 Kilo Golf Mike.
November 0 Kilo Golf Mike. We've got you loud and clear aboard the International Space Station. Welcome aboard.
Okay. Okay, Colonel, very good. Nice to make a contact with you again. And hey, just a question. I saw your Twitter profile picture. Is that Everest Base Camp? Go ahead.
Yeah, sure is. It's Mount Everest, and when I was there, I was taken at base camp. Have you been there?
Oh yeah. We've been to base camp a couple of times, and up on got some really nice shots up on Kalapatar, if you know where that is, and that gives you a nice kind of profile of Everest looking up. Go ahead.
Everest that I wanted to take it there. I had my spacewalking buddy Scott Barazinski from my shuttle flight back a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, was trying for the summit. I just was going to base camp and then just around base camp there.
Oh yeah, I understand that. Yeah, going to base camp is in itself enough and a lot of work. That's for sure with the altitude. If you're not used to that altitude, it's kind of interesting. It doesn't matter what physical condition you're in, right?
The International Space Station, over.
Okay, there we have. We got to see Rob Kuntz actually communicating with an astronaut operating the amateur station aboard the ISS. That entire project is called ARISS, ARISS, which is Amateur Radio on the ISS. Now, what else is interesting about this particular video is that, so we know he's not just talking to anybody, there happens to be the other end of this. There's a video of the other end of this communication as well. I've already put the link to that in the description, so you can see the astronauts on the other side, and you'll notice it matches up nicely with this, so we know he actually was having the communication at the time. Now, let's see. Oh, Commander Solo. No objection. We love to have guests and panel members and all that sort of thing. Just sign on to the Discord, sir. That's probably the best one. I've been trying to unify a way of communicating with everyone, and Discord seems to be the thing. There's a link to our Discord server in the description as well. Just click into that, say hi to me there, remind me of this conversation, and we shall talk. And odds are I may have used some of your software then, looking at your comment. So anyway, yeah, hop on the Discord server, and I'd be happy to talk to you about it. Anyway, yeah, so talking to the ISS. Back on track here. Taking a look at this setup, I would say if bought new, what we're looking at is a minimum of $20,000 worth of equipment sitting on that desk and probably outside the house with commercial antennas, rotators, things of that sort, antenna rotors. So I mean, looking at this video, one might get the impression that it's a pretty daunting task to communicate with the ISS. Well, as luck would have it, that's not the case. Of course, the better your equipment and the more you have, and the more sophisticated your antenna system is, the more luck you will have in actually making a contact with the ISS. Because as you are probably aware, everybody that has a ham license wants to be logged with it as communicating with an astronaut at least once. Because at present, since that's the only manned presence we have in space at any one time we can communicate with, that gets you a Worked All Space Award, I believe. That you have communicated with every possible ham station in space. Anyway, but all of this equipment, we'd see a couple of transceivers there. Obviously, there's computer control involved. I'd be willing to bet that's not a crappy microphone hanging there on the boom either. But is it really necessary? Oddly enough, no. Why don't we take a quick look at how, let's see, let's take a look at how Alan Snelson accomplishes something very similar. That's harder, it's trickier, and you have to time it better, and make sure you have good elevation of the ISS, so you have a good pass overhead. But let's take a look at how he did it. Here we go.
Channel 41, over. DN1PU OR4 ISS, copy loud and clear. How about me, over? Good 10 talks. The best part of being an astronaut is being able to fly over the world so many times and get to see the Earth from a high point. Over. We don't really have any rituals. Breakfast, we work, we have lunch, we work again, and then we go to bed at night. So just like...
Okay. Well, there we go. So you see, this can kind of be done on a budget, and the antenna systems on the ISS and the clear line of sight to the thing makes it so that even with a handheld transceiver, and amateur, you still have to be a licensed amateur operator to speak to the to actually transmit. But with the entry of the various other countries making radios, not just the U.S. and Japan, the prices have dropped tremendously. you can one can acquire a handheld transceiver that looks just like this one, honestly, for under $100. So one can do it on a budget, and it's not it's really not beyond most people's means if they wish to. Let's see. I think I saw a question in here. Beach 8. Okay, Beach. We are limited to 2 kilowatts out at the antenna. So that's and most people don't. Most of the hams don't even do that. With the regular 100 watts out, you can go around the entire planet. And for VHF and UHF, which is what the uplinks and downlinks to the ISS are, you need nowhere near that amount of power. 2 or 3 watts will actually do it. So it's not. What if you're broke like Brian and me? Okay, Steven. Then you go to a ham fest and pick up a unit for $5 or $10, an older unit that will accomplish the same task, but it can still be done. Anyway, yeah. Now, and actually, for those that, I should mention that all of the frequencies in use are published. And let's see. Let me get them up here just to show you. This should be it. Yeah, there we go. The frequencies in use for voice are these are all in megahertz. 145.8 is basically the down for well, quite a few things. Voice uplink is what you transmit on, and you listen on the other frequency. You listen on the downlink, and you speak. You transmit on the uplink. Now, in the United States, where I am, that's, you can see our uplink. There is the 144.49. In addition to voice communications, there's what's called packet radio, very similar to what we're doing on the internet right now, except a lot slower because it's going over radio. Over VHF, you don't have the bandwidth that we have, on the commercial internet that we're using. Anyway, yeah, it's really not beyond anyone's means, and even those who don't have or don't wish to get an amateur license, which there's information on that included in the description as well, if anyone is interested. But the downlink is not. There's no encryption, no coded signals, nothing of that sort. It's just clear voice communication. One can get a handheld scanner and listen, and pretty much verify that there is someone talking at the other end. But then again, that would verify there's someone talking at the other end. But how do we know it's someone in space? How do we know it's someone far away? How do we know it's not someone, 10 miles away in some secret communications area? Well, one of the ways that can be done is Doppler shift. I don't think we can see it here very well. No, it's not. I'd have to back it up. But anyway, there's this thing called Doppler shift, where as the ISS is approaching, it's, as we know, radio waves. It's a speed of light sort of thing. Standard non-ionizing radiation. Nothing weird about it. It's just like light, and it behaves as light does. Its speed is always going to be constant, based on the medium it's moving through, of course. What changes is the wavelength as something's coming towards you, and then after it passes and goes away from you. Now, when you are receiving a signal, even with a handheld scanner from the ISS, as it comes towards you, the waves are compressed, so the frequency is actually higher than the frequencies that we had listed on the previous slide. You'd actually hear it slightly up from that. and then once it passes you, Doppler shift, it would be lower. And based on the amount of Doppler shift, it's not that difficult to tell that something moving at that speed would not be inside the atmosphere. Well, not for long, let us say. All right, let us see. What else do we have here? Oh, right. How do we know when it's available? It has to be over the horizon. VHF and UHF. You notice some of the frequencies there were in the UHF range, like the 437. That's UHF. The repeater uplink. Those are all they're termed line of sight communication frequencies because they don't bounce off the ionosphere. You can't, it's they basically just pierce the ionosphere and continue out into space until they either dissipate to where they're not detectable anymore or run into something. So where the hell was I going with this? Right. God damn it, I hate when that happens. All right. Wait, was there a question there? Oh, no, there wasn't. Let us see. Oh, right. This part we didn't talk about with this. Antenna requirements. There was some discussion about being on a budget earlier. Let us quickly take a look at what one needs to do to be able to communicate. Now, probably in this, you don't really need to buy anything. One can actually make a very efficient antenna to do this kind of communication. The most common antennas used in VHF and UHF are the vertical sort because they take up very little room, and honestly, if you want to make one, they're pretty cheap to make too. Here's an example of one. Yeah. Cheapest antenna to make. It's just a quarter wave antenna. It's perfectly resonant for the frequencies you're using. So all the power you put into it, none of it is wasted as heat. It basically goes where you need it to go. However, I'm sure you knew there was a however coming. The thing about that is that this particular antenna has what is called a null. With a vertical antenna, if you look at this antenna here, the signal basically moves outward. The strongest lobe of both transmission and reception moves outwards at 90 degrees to that vertical section that you see. Now, for satellite communication or to talk to the ISS, this is basically useless because where's the ISS going to be? It's going to be in that null directly over. So you see where that might be a problem. Let us see. The solution to that, there's two in order of increasing effectiveness. This is called a dipole. It's exactly what it sounds like. Two poles. It's a half wave in length total, and it's basically two quarter wave, like the vertical section of that last antenna. It's basically two of those pointing opposite of each other, horizontal, parallel to the ground. And one can make this with a couple of lengths of copper pipe. The formula for determining the length is quite simple. Not very hard to do and almost free. Now, a dipole will radiate very nicely vertically. One better is, let me see if I have a picture of it here, what's called a turnstile antenna. Looks like this. Again, very simple to build. People make them at home all the time. That's actually part of the fun of the whole amateur radio thing, is you get to make your own stuff. It's the only radio service where you get to make your own stuff. It does not need to be type certified to be approved by the FCC. As an amateur operator, you're certifying that you made it the way it should be made, and it works the way it should work, and it's not going to cause interference to anything that it shouldn't. If you take a look at this antenna, it's basically two dipoles crossed. The last one we looked at, two of those crossed with a slightly larger one, a reflector down below. Again, you don't need $1 million to do this kind of thing, and honestly, just about anybody can do it. Right. Okay, that's it for antenna requirements. Now, we were talking a little while ago about both VHF, well, UHF definitely, and VHF to a somewhat lesser degree. It's a little bit over the horizon because of bending, and sometimes miracles happen with what's called tropospheric ducting. But on a normal day, VHF and UHF are both line-of-sight communications methods. So the ISS has to be above the horizon where you are in order for you to make any kind of contact. So, how does one tell? As luck would have it, it's not that difficult. There's quite a bit of freeware available that will help you do exactly that. And let's bring one up now. This is running live, by the way. Let me bring this up. This particular software, and this is not an endorsement of this specific one because they're all pretty darn good. None of them have given me really ridiculous results. And let's take a look here. Here, this one is called Orbitron. Now, it will track or give you predictions for, honestly, quite a few satellites. As you can see, you have options. The only one we're particularly interested in at the moment is the ISS, which, as we can see, I hope you all can see this. Yeah, I think it's pretty big. The ISS is indicated by a little icon that looks coincidentally very much like the ISS, and you'll note the trails. Now, the funny thing about these trails is they're not behind the icon; they're in front of the icon. These show where the ISS will be at some point in the future. And if you'll note the little circle around the ISS moving icon, that is what's called its radio footprint. If your location, wherever you are, wherever you set your location to be, in this case, I think you can see where it says my location. That's the creative name I picked to identify my location. I was very creative that day. In any case, when the ISS gets to a point where your location is inside of that green circle, you would then be able to communicate via either the insanely expensive setup or a handheld transceiver, or, if you were only listening, a handheld scanner. And I've also put links to the ARIS website that lists all those frequencies as well, if anyone has interest in looking into it further. Now, I mentioned earlier Doppler shift, which you kind of have to compensate for if you want to have reliable communications. Almost all of the software that will give you these predictions also has the ability to control most of the modern radios. Not the handheld one that we looked at. That you have to do by hand. You can still do it, but that you have to change the frequency by hand if you want to compensate for Doppler shift. However, if we take a look here, it will tell you if you have a directional antenna, it'll give you azimuth and elevation. So you can point. We didn't go into directional antennas because honestly, they're just not necessary. It's a cool thing to have, and it makes it even more a certainty that you're going to be able to communicate. But even the dipole or the turnstile antenna works perfectly. All of the software that does this sort of thing, that tells you when it's going to be above the horizon and when you're in its footprint, in its radio footprint, will tell you. You probably can't read it. It might be too small on your screens there, but it's got an uplink and downlink listed. Now, funny thing is that those uplinks and downlinks do not match what we looked at on the a couple of slides ago when I showed you the uplink and downlink frequencies for the ISS. By the position, almost all of these the prediction software will calculate what the Doppler shift will be for the frequencies that you're going to be using to both transmit and receive, and will automatically change you have it wired to your transceiver. It will adjust the frequencies for you, so you don't need to twist the knobs or anything of that sort to have it perfectly on frequency, and enable your communications. So this is Orbitron. This is just one of the software packages available that does a fine job of tracking not just the ISS, but all kinds of objects in space. And it's updated frequently with new orbital elements so that it's accurate when you need to use it. So, all right, that's Orbitron. That's that. Let's get back here. Yep, back to the guys' radio. Alrighty, let's see. What else did I want to show you guys? All right. Since we're talking about the amateur radio community already, and we're talking about a satellite, it's a really big, really expensive inhabited satellite, there's really no reason not to include that there's another organization, and there are other satellites that are not government satellites. AMSAT. It's amateur radio satellite making organization. And no, they very rarely hit the dome, and I suspect that might be due to the non-existence of the dome. I'm not sure if that's the reason, but I'm almost sure. Anyway, oh yeah, Copernicus, that's not a bad idea. Yeah, contacting the ISS from Antarctica. That's hit them twice. Anyway, AMSAT. These are satellites that are actually constructed by a group of amateur operators. Just ham folks got together, contributed a heap of their own money, and I believe they do get sponsored to do this as well. And they make satellites. And here, let me show you a picture of one. There are on the AMSAT website, and I actually included a link to that as well for if anyone's interested. If anyone's really interested, you've gone past ISS, you want to talk through amateur satellites. Generally, what these do is act as repeaters, which is you wish to make a contact with someone some ridiculous distance away, quarter, a third of the way around the sphere that we live on. You transmit on the uplink frequency for one of these satellites, it retransmits it, and someone ridiculously far away you get to make a contact with on a frequency that is supposed to be line of sight. Here, let me bring one up. Where's a good one? Yeah, there are 4 that they give you the operating schedules for. Some are here. Let's see. Yeah, here's a good one. Here's the picture. AMSAT is the corporation, and this would be Oscar 7. Now, Oscar is that is also an acronym. It's orbiting satellite carrying amateur radio. I kid you not. That's that's what it stands for. Now the uplink and downlink frequencies for the there are 4 listed on AMSAT as being in service. Some all the time, all day and all night. Some only when they're illuminated, because if there's not sunlight hitting their solar panels, they don't retain enough power to operate in the dark cycle. And yeah, Oscar 7 is one of them. And here is, all right, I have to say it just so we don't get quote mined. This is not a photograph of Oscar 7 in space. This is an artist's rendition of Oscar 7 in space. Here is, yeah, here's Oscar 85 when it was still on the ground. Little CubeSat, very efficient way to make satellites, not prone to damage, not a lot of protruding parts to get snapped off in transit. And let's see. Here's Oscar 91. And let's see, the last of the 4 is Oscar 92 here. Now, I mentioned that not a lot of protrusions to get snapped off and damaged. Well, gee, if satellites are being put up on a spacecraft, usually they'd be packaged so that no damage occurs. Well, see, the interesting thing about most of the older amateur satellites, like the ones we're looking at now, is generally they are put up as what's called secondary payload. What that means is after whatever space agency has agreed to put them into space, after they're done packing everything they need to pack into their spacecraft, they will bring in this satellite and go, hey, look over there. We could wedge this in behind that whatever. And there's no guarantee. That's what secondary payload is. So they have to be pretty sturdy little fellas in order to not get damaged because of that. Secondary payload does not have all of the same safeguards for that a primary payload would have. The last one I have a picture of is Falcon Sat 3. Here it is. Which everything I just said has nothing to do with this one. It's got a lot of protruding parts. Now, reason for that is this one was not built just by the amateur community. The cubes, they're tiny, Tesla. They're not big. CubeSats range from 5 centimeters to 20 centimeters, little fellas. Yeah, this is Falcon Sat 3. It was built in 05 to 06 by cadets and faculty at the Space Systems Research Center at the U.S. Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, over in Colorado there. And it was launched in 2007 on a nice big Atlas rocket. Now, after whatever experiments were planned with it for the Air Force, it was opened up for amateur use. So this satellite, although put up by the Air Force, really, was basically turned over to the amateur community to be able to make use of. All right. Oh yeah, they're little fellas, the satellites. Okay. There's that. Very nice. What else do we have? Let's see. Just trying to think if I had any other details on that. No, I think not. Nope. That's about that. Anyway, so the whole point of all of this was that you've all heard that satellites don't exist. Well, talking to one and being able to prove that you're talking to something that is not within the Earth's atmosphere, generally you'd expect that to be pretty convincing. And not that we're going to convince everyone who really has a stake in believing the converse, but since with just a handheld scanner you can basically verify that this is a thing, anyone unwilling to do so is basically admitting, you know what, I prefer to just believe in my pseudoscience. I will not do this very simple thing that you're telling us how to do. So anyway, yeah, that's about it for that. I hope you found that somewhat interesting. In addition to links to the 2 original videos that we used for this, there's links to Rob Kuntz and Alan Snell's channels also in the description. Since they're not here to do a movie night plug and pug series, I encourage you to go see them. And Rob Kuntz hasn't put anything out in quite a while, so say howdy to him. And let's see what else we have. Oh, announcement. There is an upcoming series. We did a series on things that produce life-threatening amounts of electricity for quite a while there. I believe that was termed the Zap Zap series, if I recall correctly. I think so. Anyway, there's a series coming up that you'll all find, I know you'll find interesting, because we're going to have some interesting guests, and the information itself is going to be interesting. We're going to be focusing on climate science, and I am not going to say too much because it's still under construction, let us say, and there's still a lot of writing and what's going to be included and where we need to go and who we need to talk to and what videos we need to make and all that sort of thing. But that is what's coming. And lately we've become how much spaghetti can the Falcon Heavy take into space? You see, if I was on the ISS, I'd want to know that. I would want to know the answer to that question, Reese. Anyway, yeah, with the new series is going to come out a new prize. You remember for the last series we handed out 2 of the little mini musical Tesla coil kits. I know one of them's arrived. The other is not, because it's in transit and it's outside of the USS. So, the US, there'll be a little bit of a lag there, but it's on its way, and we kind of like that whole giving out stuff. In this case, since it's going to be climate science, we found this cool thing. This is the Climate Change Denier Kit. It appears to be an interesting little experiment that is designed for the climate change denier, or to use as a demonstration to a climate change denier, or to a student who's interested in it. It doesn't have to be a climate change denier or science denier in general, but that's at the end of the series, which I believe will be wrapping up on Earth Day or something of that sort. That will be the award. It'll be another random thing, and that will be anyway. We thought that would be a good idea. Opinions? Think that's good enough? I hope. Alrighty. Let's see if there's any little details I wanted to cover that I missed. Oh, right. Back to the amateur radio and the ISS. This is just a little detail. There's new ham equipment that's presently under safety review. That's the last step before getting it up there, because obviously it has to be certified that not only will it function, not only will it not draw too much power, it also has to have sufficient protection built in that it will not burst into flame. So you can see how in an enclosed environment, like within the ISS, that might be somewhat, well, bad. It's presently under safety review, and they're looking at flight readiness in somewhere between March and May of this year. So when there are updates, I shall give them to you. Let's see. No, we missed something. I think that was about it. All right. Nope. Looks like I covered everything I wanted to cover. Are there any questions? Anything you'd like to know? Danny, no, it's not a poor man's meth kit. Thanks, Brian. I'm not going to ask how you know that. Let's see. What else have we? I did not, Ken. I did not. I did not cover. EME is Earth, Moon, Earth. That's where you bounce a radio signal off of the moon back to the Earth and establish a contact with another ham operator somewhere else on the planet via that path. It's another one of those things that an amateur operator will try and do. It's like a challenge. It's to be able to do it. You have to have a ignoring Gelzer. Am I ignoring you? I don't think I'm ignoring you. Okay. Sorry, didn't think I was ignoring you. Anyway, yeah, Earth, Moon, Earth. It's sort of a cool thing to say one was able to do, and yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that. For example, the directional antennas, the Yagi antennas, are also called beams, where you can focus most of the radiated energy from your antenna in one direction. What happens on some rare occasions is that sometimes you'll transmit in one direction with one of these beam antennas, and a certain amount of time later, you'll hear yourself picking it up off the back of your antenna. I'm sure you know what causes that. You have bounced the signal entirely around the planet, and you are receiving it off the back of your antenna. That I have not achieved myself. Yep, exactly. The ionosphere is used for that kind of thing. That's right. It's almost indistinguishable from magic. Quite correct. Anyway, basically, I do not use beam antennas. I've never had the need to. I just use wire antennas, and I've basically been able to establish contacts with any point on the planet. That changes based on whether it's day or night. The ionosphere does different things. The number of sunspots has a tremendous effect. Reese, how long does that usually take? You mean the hearing yourself off the back of your antenna? You know, I should know that. And actually, I should be able to do the math in my head. Yes, Tesla, or it's bouncing off the firmament. Consider that RF, a radio frequency transmission moves at the speed of light. Divide that to get the time. Divide that by the distance around the globe, and that amount of time. Oddly enough, it matches. What that number would be, I'm not going to attempt the math in my head at the moment. You know what? Here's something to hold me to. Make me give you that number next Sunday. But anyway, yeah, it's interestingly enough, it does coincide with what. Now, of course, as an amateur, you couldn't use it as an exact measure, but it's a pretty good indicator that the sphere is in fact a sphere, and coincidentally, just about the size we were told it was going to be. Right. That works, Ken. Alrighty. Um, let's see. You know what we'll have to do sometime? We will have to. We'll have to try and make an ISS. I'll have to see when it's going to coincide with the Sunday Science. We will try. Maybe we'll try to make an ISS contact while we're broadcasting, and that way we can have one or more of you can ask a question for me to verbalize and get the answer and all that. Maybe that would be a cool thing to do. All right. Well, let's see. Mary wants to know, is there a website that's devoted to showing the FE people that Earth is truly a globe and the ISS does exist? Yes, Mary. That would be this channel. That's what we're... that is our purpose. That's what we're trying to do. Hey, NA, I guess you're thinking that doing the live communication stuff while we're doing our broadcast would be that's what you mean would be a cool thing? Then, all right. I will attempt to find a coinciding pass when we're going to have a decent high elevation pass of the ISS, and maybe we'll do that. All righty. Well, that's what I got. I hope you all found this too fairly interesting, and I hope I didn't put any of you to sleep. That being the case, I hope that's the case. I really don't have anything else to add. Let's see. Oh, Steve, are you going to try and make a contact? Not through ham radio. You mean you're going to try and do a transit, right, Steve? You're going to try and photograph a transit? Yes, that's it. See, I was thinking of all this radio stuff. I forgot about there are other things people do with the ISS. Yep. And everybody keep an eye out. Steve's going to be working on getting an ISS transit. Oh, let's see. Could that be Andy? Hey, Andy is here. There we go. Andy, welcome.
Hey, how's it going, Si?
Not bad, not bad. Glad you're able to make it. Everybody?
Yeah.
Andy got a new cool truck.
I did. That was a lot of paperwork.
Very good. Well,
I was hoping to be done. I was hoping to be done by 6, and it just wasn't quite the case.
That's okay. I went into the. Everybody's saying hi to you, Andy. I went into.
Hey, everybody.
Just covered the ISS, how we know it's real, because we can talk to them and they'll talk back, and all that sort of thing. And I mentioned
nice.
I mentioned the upcoming series and the prize. You know what? I should here. Let me do a screen share so you can see what the heck is going on. Here we go. There you go. That is the that's the prize for the new series, the climate science series. And I mentioned that this is
very cool.
Yeah, it's the climate change deniers experiment kit. And I mentioned we're going to have some interesting guests, interesting videos, and all that sort of thing, but didn't give out any details. They're going to have to wait for that. So,
yep. Details will have to wait till next week.
Indeed. Very good. All right. Let's bring this up. Okay. And yeah, I'm glad you jumped in. I was just about to wrap it up, but we very nearly missed you entirely. Congrats on the new vehicle, sir.
Okay.
Best of luck with it.
Thank you.
And let's.
Yeah, I'll have some pictures and stuff up in a little while once it's light out again.
Nice. Can't wait to see that. Alrighty. I don't see any other questions, so on that note, we'll do what we usually do after about an hour and wrap it up. Let's see. And this time, this time I'll get the right closing, not the movie night closing. Hey, thanks for joining, Andy, and everybody who joined us. thanks for joining us once again. We'll see you next week. Here we go.
Well, thanks for joining, everybody. Sorry I was as untimely as I was tonight.
Bye, all.